brand new edition of the 901 Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Dockery. You can find me on Twitter at LDoc93. You can find the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. You can find Bluff City Media on Twitter at Bluff City_media. And you can find Bluff City Media on Facebook as well. Just go to Facebook and search Bluff City Media. Go to Facebook and search 901 Soccer, and they should both pop right up. And of course, if you are watching this, you are more than likely watching it on YouTube. So please feel free to subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. And make sure when you're watching episodes of the 901 Soccer Podcast that you like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff that all of the more professional and better YouTube people know how to do than I do. So here's what we got for you today. This is kind of I don't know, experimental is not really the right word. This is just really going to be like a spitball. And I mean, I have notes, but this is just an episode of the podcast where what would it look like and what would need to happen if professional soccer were ever to make a return to Memphis? Because obviously Memphis 901 FC has packed up. They've taken their ball and gone home to Santa Barbara, California. Why they picked Santa Barbara, I still don't know. It's not like, I've been to Santa Barbara, California in 2018 and 2022, and I don't recall seeing any USL quality soccer stadiums out there, but who am I to be told or to understand what's going on there? But 901 FC is gone, and if professional soccer is ever to return to Memphis, I've got some ideas on what would need to happen and what it would need to look like and what would need to be done. Both at the start and over the course of the team's existence. Now, before we go any further, I do want to let everybody know that in an effort to fill the void left by the departure of Memphis 901 FC, all of the content that I used to write for World Soccer Talk, I no longer write for World Soccer Talk, so all of the U.S. national team stuff, all of the larger, more national soccer talking points that I used to write about for World Soccer Talk, I now am going to be publishing over on the Bluff City Media website, both because I still need an outlet to write for, and because the outlet that I do write for needs more soccer content now that the professional team is gone. So I think that's been started this week. I think that's gone very well. I've got four pieces published over at Bluff City Media's website, which you could definitely go to, and you should become an insider to as well. U.S. men's national team attendance, U.S. women's national team attendance, Mexico's attendance for games that they've played in the United States, and the 25 largest soccer crowds in the United States in 2024. And I got a couple more that I'm going to publish before the end of the year. But I think so far in the first week of my moving stuff from one site to another, I think it's gone very well. At least it's caught wildfire on Reddit. I can't say the same for Twitter and Facebook, but who cares where it catches fire as long as it does. So if that's something that, you had questions about, I may have reached out and told one or two of you that unfortunately I no longer write for World Soccer Talk, but all the stuff that I used to write for them, I'm now going to be doing for Bluff City Media. So that's just a little shout out, pat on the back for myself and a heads up for you guys. So first thing about potential return of professional soccer to Memphis. Now, of course, we still do have the men's and women's teams over at the University of Memphis. Unfortunately, neither one of them went to the NCAA tournament this year, and you can go back and read some of the written content I did about how frustrating that was. So don't worry. The coverage of the U of M is still, for the soccer programs at the U of M, is still going to be there. Might be trying to figure out how to reinvent myself as the college soccer guy, but so don't worry about that. Coach Monaghan, Coach Mulrooney both do great jobs. They're both very accommodating of if I ever need anything from them. So don't worry. There's still plenty of Memphis Tiger soccer content to come. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be coming until probably August. But since there's no other soccer teams in town for you fans to go support, I do highly recommend that you go support them. They're both very stable, very good programs, and the games are free, and you can't beat free. So that being said, for the time being, I don't want professional soccer back in Memphis anytime soon, because it would feel it's too soon and it wouldn't feel right. It's sort of like if you were to, like the minute you break up with somebody, and this is life philosophy, it works for some people, it doesn't work for other people. But if you were to get out of a relationship that you'd been in for a very long time, and then all of a sudden immediately, like 2 weeks later, be in a new one, that would feel just a little bit weird, I think, or it would to me. And so I think it's the same case here. Not I want to see just left. And it's not that they just left, it's that we didn't even know that they were leaving until they said, deuces, we're out. So for the time being, I don't know that I want professional soccer back for a minute. I think we all need time, for lack of a better word, we need time to grieve and mourn the loss of I don't want to see. I was texting with a regular listener of the show the other day who said a piece of him died when I don't want to see left. And I totally understand that. And because 6 years of covering a team and of supporting a team and going to games and keeping up with results and all of the stuff that goes along with that, that's a long time. That's a lot of time, effort, and money invested into something that decided they didn't want to be invested anymore and that you and I were not worth a damn. So that's understandable how people could feel that a piece of them is gone now that the team is gone. And so that's part of the reason why I don't want a professional team back anytime soon. I think we all need to focus on and support the University of Memphis. They've got really good programs over there. They both just won the AAC regular season title this year. Until this year, they had both gone to multiple NCAA tournaments in a row, both the men and the women. Obviously, the women have advanced farther more often than the men's team has. But we need time to grieve and to mourn the loss of Memphis 901 FC. And so, do I want professional soccer to come back to Memphis at some point? Absolutely. This is not me saying that I don't want them back ever. What's the saying? I'm not saying no. I'm just saying not right now. Not right now. I think also we as a city, the soccer public, we need to hurt. And that sounds stupid because obviously we're all hurting. But we need to hurt, and we need to remember what it feels like to lose a team like Memphis 901 FC that we had been so invested in, so that whatever mistakes were made with that team can be learned from and applied to the new team, if and when it ever comes. So that's my line of thinking there. And if you disagree, if you want it back immediately, fine. And also, if it does, for whatever reason, if a professional team comes back like next year, yeah, you bet your happy ass I'm going to be out there covering them because that's what I do. But my preference would be we need some time. So the next topic, the next question, I guess you could say, is, all right, if they come back, what league are they going to be in? Are they going to be – they're not going to be MLS, so put that out of your mind. USL Championship, League One, League Two, NISA, God, please not NISA, anything but NISA. That league is a shit show from hell. You can go back to October of 23, where I wrote a piece for Beyond the 90 about how NISA just decided they weren't going to be paying the referees anymore. I interviewed the head of the professional, the PSRA, which is the union representing all the professional referees in this country. I reached out to the comms guy for NISA, and the first email he sent me back looked like the drunk text that I used to send back when I was a drinker. Every fourth word was misspelled, didn't make a whole lot of sense. And then the professional response I got was like, well, we already talked to somebody else about this and we tried, but whatever, essentially. You can go back and the screenshot of the official email is in that piece. And I'll let you draw your own conclusions about what it meant. But please, God, not NISA. So that leaves us with USL League One, USL Championship, perhaps League Two. I don't think League Two. I certainly don't want League Two. That's one of the inaccurate assumptions that folks had about Memphis 901 FC is that it was a minor league team. And I tried, I was pulling my hair out. I tried for years to try to combat that notion and ultimately failed because nothing is farther from the truth. I feel like USL League Two, think we would all be hard pressed to try to combat the notion that that's a minor league. I'm sorry. That's just, I think that we'd be a lot harder. So USL Championship would be the preference. USL League One would not be the end of the world. But as far as the championship, Memphis does fit the mold of kind of the markets that the USL Championship wants to go to. Think Louisville, Birmingham, Tulsa, cities like that, right? The question is, would the USL Championship decide, you know what, we're going back to they just tanked and we just moved their team, or maybe they moved their team. We're going back. Would that happen? And the other question I have is, has the USL Championship ever gone back to a city that they lost? Be it team leaving, MLS encroaching, whatever. Have they? I don't know if they that's not like a rhetorical question. That's a legitimate question. Have they ever done it? Because I don't know the answer to it. So, I guess I think there's, again, I work for an attorney, so I'll give everybody the most attorney answer ever. Well, it depends. If somebody with deep pockets and a clear vision went to the USL Championship, hey, we have a real plan. This is what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. This, that, and the other. I don't think the USL Championship will go, nah, we just lost that city and we don't want your money. But, also it would, I think it would be unwise for the USL Championship to, so soon after losing a team from that city, to immediately go, sure, let's put another team in that city without the appropriate guardrails in place. And that's really kind of the whole purpose of this episode, is to kind of talk about what it would need to look like and what would need to happen. So that's my thought. If it ended up being League One, that's not the end of the world. There's a lot of fairly successful League One outfits out there that don't have the minor league stigma that 901 FC got stuck with. Some of the more successful ones, Union Omaha comes to mind. Ford Madison up in Wisconsin comes to mind. So it's not Lexington, Sporting Lexington, and speaking of which, how about this new interesting concept of a tournament that the USL is doing? The Jägermeister Cup is expanding to include USL Championship and League One teams. It sort of felt almost like it could have been a shot across the bow at the Leagues Cup, except that it's a very different format. It almost looks like a Champions League, the original Champions League format of 2-leg series, home and away, that sort of deal. I think it's great. I would have loved if 901 FC had been able to participate in something like that. It added a little bit of extra juice that they otherwise didn't have. But anyway, League One wouldn't be the end of the world, but the preference is USL Championship. But whoever, and if possible, needs to show the league, hey, here's why it didn't work last time, and here's why it's going to work this time. Part of that is going to have to be, you need enough runway leading up to that first game for whenever the new team starts, right? We see it happen all the time in this country, and trust me, with the World Cup happening in 2026, we're going to see it start to happen a lot more, where too many teams launch with very, very, very little time to build anticipation. Forget anticipation, to build a damn team. I mean, the NWSL was the worst about that for years, where they'd be like October of one year, like, hey, new team, new NWSL team starting in this city, and by the way, they start playing in March. So you get like 4 months to build a whole franchise, a whole team, a whole organization, and I don't think it's a coincidence that a lot of those like for years the NWSL was very unstable because teams were folding, teams were moving, all of this stuff, because a lot of them didn't have a lot of the appropriate runway. Ironically enough, Racing Louisville had a lot of runway, and all that infrastructure was already in place because of how successful Louisville City is, and they're usually not a very good team. So I don't. That's just a little bit ironic to me. So you need time you need enough of an on ramp. You need, how many what you need for an on ramp is, if you're going on here's the example. You're on Getwell, and you're going east on 240, right? The time for you to merge once like you're in the on ramp does that little squiggle thing, and then you're merging, and then you're on. You have basically like 3 exits before you ever have to actually get out of that lane if you're not getting off at one of those exits, right? That's what you need here. You don't need one of those exits where it's like as soon as you get on, if you don't get over, you're crashing into a retaining wall or you're in a ditch on the side of the road. That happens too many times in the American club soccer scene. So if professional soccer is to return to Memphis, they would need the get well on ramp to 240 going east, right? They don't need, you need to be able to have time to figure things out, to get a whole organization in place, and to get the city and the fan base and the local media, which we'll talk about more in a minute, need to get everybody excited. When Memphis not FC sort of maybe kind of did it right. I think they had about 11 months, maybe somewhere between 11 and 13 months of buildup before the first game. It was like February of 2018. They announced that there was going to be a team, I think, and the team started playing in March of 19. And those crowds in 2019, I mean that had to have been near or at the top of the league for that year because they averaged 6,500 people a game in 2019. So if you can get enough of a buildup and enough of a runway leading up to the launch of the team in that first game, and just hypothetically, I mentioned we're hosting the World Cup in 2026, right? So if you think fall of 26, after there's this big giant groundswell of support for the game of soccer in this country, we hope, that would be like an ideal time to start announcing, hey, we've got these teams coming. And, so hypothetically say October of 2026, announce that the team is going to begin play in March of 2028, right? So that gives you about a year and a half to kind of build enough of an on-ramp. And now, I say 28 because we have Olympic soccer in the United States in 2028, men's and women's out in LA. And I feel like you would be able to cash in on that over the summer. And I don't want to see to not do that this summer when you had Copa America, Euros, and Olympics all at the same time. Different story for a different day. But I think we're going to see a lot of, we might even see amateur leagues pop up purporting to be professional leagues that end up folding after a few weeks. But I think specifically as it relates to Memphis, if you can, on the heels of the 26 World Cup, give yourself a year and a half to 2 years of buildup for a team coming to Memphis, I think that would lead to a pretty successful launch. You think about the old Alliance of American Football, the AAF, right? The Memphis Express, I think was the name of that team. They showed up in December and were like, hey, well, here's this new league and this new team. And they started playing in January. And by the end of February, and by 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, the league was filing a bankruptcy case because they were done. And they were throwing players' luggage out of their hotel rooms because the bill hadn't been paid because the league was broke and had no money. That's what you don't want to happen for a potential return to professional soccer in Memphis. You don't want to Memphis Americans it, right? Or maybe I should just say NISL it, because there's some legal terms that you could probably use to describe that league, and I don't want to get anybody in trouble, myself included, and use the word that I think that league was. But if soccer does come back to Memphis with a professional team at some point in time, most importantly, the dates to me don't matter. It's the time frame. You need to give yourself a nice big window to ensure that when it does launch, it gains traction and catches a foothold, right? So once that happens, and this is going to sound very similar to probably half a dozen shows and a half a dozen articles that I've written over the years for Memphis 901 FC, is once if and when you do get the team, marketing. Can't say it enough. It must be continuous. It must be constant. It must be ubiquitous. It needs to be obnoxious. It needs to be everywhere. What you need to do is like in The Wolf of Wall Street, right? right before they do the Steve Madden IPO, and they're about to take it public. And Jordan Belfort's up there with his microphone talking, telling people, pick up the phone and start dialing, right? Is your landlord ready to evict you? Good. Pick up the phone and start dialing. That's what 901FC needs to do. And as Jordan Belfort said, I want you to ram Steve Madden stock down your clients' throats until they fucking choke on it. That's what needs to happen if professional soccer really wants to catch on in Memphis. And Memphis 901FC and sort of tried to do that this year, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but they did not do a good job of that. If it happens, whoever comes on board and brings a new team to Memphis, you need to ram the team, the brand, the players, ram it down the city's throat until they fucking choke on it. That's what needs to happen. I want everybody to be so sick of seeing, God, these 901FC commercials are everywhere. God, 901FC this, 901FC that, or I'm just using 901FC as a placeholder. I want people so tired that they just give in and fight. Because that's really, if you think about it, what advertising and marketing has turned into, just beating you to death with it until you're so tired of it that you just buy it to give in so you don't have to see it anymore. That's what needs to happen here. Or that's what will need to happen here, right? Cram it down their throats until they choke on it, and they buy 100,000 shares. I don't know how many people of you have seen The Wolf of Wall Street, but that's what he says. So you need to cram this down people's throat until they buy season tickets and jerseys and tell their friends and group packages and all of it. All of it. That's what needs to happen. It's billboards, newspaper ads, TV ads, radio ads, right? If I had $1 for every time I heard somebody at Memphis 901FC, we don't do billboards because nobody else does billboards, I could have paid for a billboard for 901FC. Billboards are a marketing staple in Memphis. You have to know your market. 901FC didn't know their market. And if they did, they didn't care. And both are inexcusable. Billboard ads, newspaper, TV ads, radio. Everywhere, right? You need to have players and coaches make appearances at other sporting events in town. That's something they tried right before COVID, and they tried right before the playoff game this year. Twice in 6 years, not enough, right? Grizzlies games. As much as I hate the Grizzlies for bogarting all the stadium money and screwing 901FC, the Redbirds, and the University of Memphis, it's like the mafia. You got to work with them. So have them make appearances at Grizzly games, at Tiger football games, Tiger basketball games, the Showboats, the Redbird. Showboats and Redbirds might not be around for very long, but if they're still around, definitely have them show up there at those games too. Do whatever. Do cross-promotion nights. Hey, here's this Grizzlies-styled soccer jersey, or here's this basketball-styled soccer, whatever. This is something they did a lot better at this year, but it was too little too late. You need to be out at every single youth tournament at Mike Rose, at Snowden and South Haven, wherever. There's a youth tournament. If there's a tournament going on, you need to be there. Those are the soccer people. Maybe if there's concern about, we don't want to just keep doing this with the same people, you are stupid not to. And they did a better job at that this year. There were a number of times where they were at Mike Rose. I can personally attest to that because I'm out there all the time refereeing from dawn to dusk and then some. So, but it needs to be all day, every day. I'll never forget, right before the 2023 playoff game against Louisville City, I was on field 14. I was doing a U16. It was U14, U16, U4. I think it was U16 boys game. 35-minute halves. They set up their tent after I had started the game, and they packed up and left before I finished the game. And they put it in a spot where if you walk down the side of the stadium, it's in the back corner where nobody ever goes. And then they wondered why nobody turned up at the playoff game. Well, it's because you put your tent out where nobody could see it, and you were only there for 45 minutes. They did a better job at that this year. They were out there for a large chunk of every Saturday. But Saturday is not the only day where there's tournaments at Mike Rose or at Snowden. It's especially at Mike Rose. It's Friday night, It's all day Saturday. It's all day Sunday. Not all day Sunday, but all day Saturday. I cannot tell you the number of Saturdays that I've had where I get there at 7 o'clock in the morning and I don't leave until 10:30 at night. 901 FC need to be first money in, last money out. First one's there, last to leave, right? Now, I keep saying 901 FC because that's all I've ever known. Whoever and whatever a prospective new team is, I'm just using 901 FC as the placeholder, so bear with me. But you need to be out there all night Friday, dawn to dusk on Saturday, and until that last game kicks off on Sunday, which is usually like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on the size of the tournament. How do I know this? I usually get the last kickoff of the tournament. So you need, and that goes for Snowden as well. Every so often they would show up. It's funny. That was the only time they ever did any like for the longest time. They would show up at Snowden, but not anywhere else. And my suspicion was they only knew about that because Craig Unger's daughter played for a local team and was playing in those tournaments. And I do want to give Craig Unger a shout out. I've always been hard on him, but I do want to give him a shout out in that he was the perfect soccer parent. From a referee's perspective, he was the perfect soccer parent. He didn't say nothing to nobody, and frequently would run and go get the ball if it went way over there. So I always did appreciate that about him as a soccer parent. Never once had a problem with him as a soccer parent ever. So that was always nice. But I always found it. That was always my suspicion. Is that's the only reason they knew that those tournaments were going on, and those were the ones that they appeared at. Now it was good that they did. It just wasn't enough. But there's youth tournaments. There's usually 2 in February, 2 in March, 3 in March, 2 in April, a couple in May. Then you have 3v3 tournaments over the summer. You get 2 or 3 in the fall at Snowden, 2 or 3 in the spring at Snowden. And some of those are Mississippi soccer state events where teams from all over the state of Mississippi come to Snowden to play in the event. Snowden's been selected 3 straight years to host state level events and only hosted twice because one of the years they had to cancel because not enough teams signed up because Tupelo had a tournament. And there was a lot of anger about that, myself included. But 3v3s, youth tournaments, spring, fall, doesn't matter, all day, every day, that's what you need to do. You need to make more appearances at various rec leagues. That's something they started doing in October of this year. Imagine my surprise when I walk out of the referee room at Snowden and there's a 901 FC tent here. Why did you guys not tell me that you were going to come? I could have let people know ahead of time. I'm here 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. Things that they did this year that I like, that I would like to see the new team continue, is the annual open practice. I think they did that 2 or 3 years in a row, and that was always real good. And the coaching clinics that they did, that Coach Glass put on last year and the year before, I think those went over very well, and whoever this prospective new team is, that's what they should do too. You need to have watch parties. I get that was a little bit harder for 901 FC to do this year than it was in years past because they moved from the Eastern Conference to the Western Conference, and a lot of those Western Conference games are kicking off at 9 o'clock at night. And who wants to we're not all 22 years old going out to Beale Street at 1 in the morning anymore. So usually 9 o'clock is about when it's time to start heading back to the house for a lot of people. So that sucked. They did I can think of 3 times that they did watch parties. The first one was in 2022, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. They were incredibly unlucky because that was a Sunday afternoon game on the road, which is the perfect time to do it. And there were like severe thunderstorms and lightning and tornadoes and hail and all that stuff going on. I think they were at Loudon, and that was like a 10-hour slog. So absolute disaster there. And then this year they did a watch party for when 901C was on the road in Detroit, and that happened to be a Saturday afternoon game. So that worked out well. And then they did one for the season ticket holders that they didn't tell anybody else about, which I was a little bit miffed by. It's not like I was the only person in town covering the team. Why should I know these things? So 3 watch parties in 6 years is not enough. I understand you're not going to do one for every single game. I understand that because that costs money and takes up a lot of time for a lot of people. I get that. But you got to do more than 3 and 6 years. So you're doing basically one every 2 years, not enough. You need to do it for like the rivalry type games, right? So when you're on the road at Birmingham or on the road at Louisville, hey, let's go to wherever this particular establishment, official professional team watch party. Let's do it. Playoff games. I think they only ever played one playoff game, and I don't think they did anything for it. Well, they only ever did one playoff game on the road, and I don't think they did anything resembling a watch party for it. So, but I think that's something people like the Mississippi River Kings for years used to do a watch party at various places around town. They used to do it at Buffalo Wild Wings. They used to do it at, I think, one of the pizza places somewhere in South Haven, and they were very successful for a very long time. And that's something that you need to do to give people an opportunity to be aware of the team's existence when they're not actually in town. Other stuff, and this is something that I don't want to see try to do, and then, if I'm not mistaken, I was told that the school that they did this went out of business. But you need to be more involved with schools around town. And this is something that the Grizzlies have done very, 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 very well. And you get them interested when they're young so that they stick with it. What's the old saying? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. If you've had somebody that's hated soccer for the last 35 years, you're probably wasting your time, effort, and money. But if you go to a grade school or a high school and are telling kids that are just now forming their own opinions of things, hey, come watch this team, it's a lot of fun, that's going to be successful, right? Do assemblies, whatever. Go do after school programs. And that's something that they were really good about this year. And that is something that Stephen Glass and Caleb Patterson-Sewell deserve a lot of credit for, was how they got all of the players to buy into doing stuff like that. Because that's not I understand that's something that's not everybody's cup of tea. And to a man, every one of those players went and did stuff like that, right? And I think that speaks to the culture that Caleb Patterson-Sewell and Stephen Glass were building before the rug got pulled out from under their feet. So you got to get involved with the schools, man. Public schools, private schools, city schools, county schools, any and all of them. All are welcome. Take the game to everybody. You got to have some sort of partnership with the University of Memphis. And I understand that they did a preseason game against them every few years. I understand that. It needs to be a little bit more than that. As good as that was, and that's something that whoever this new team is should continue to do, it needs to be more. I'll never forget, I think it was the U of M, I don't remember which game it was, but one of the games at the U of M, men's, women's, whoever, was playing a home game out at South Campus, Park and Getwell, the Thursday before 901SC's playoff game against Louisville City last year. Was 901SC present at that soccer game? No. Who was present marketing at that soccer game? The Memphis Showboats. You had a minor league football team hawking gear and trying to promote themselves at the University of Memphis soccer game. But the professional soccer team in Memphis that had a home playoff game 3 days later, nowhere to be seen. So that was frustrating. So this also ties into the episode of the 901 Soccer Podcast that I did with Kenny Stubblefield here for Bluff City Media, which you should go check out if you haven't gotten a chance to. That the best way, a great way, to build a soccer fan base is to use college soccer. College soccer is the perfect vehicle for getting non-soccer fans into soccer because it's a brand that they're already familiar with, and it's much more accessible than some of the other programs at the university that they support. You can go to University of Memphis game, and the players will come up and chat with you and take pictures. You're right there on the field, or next to the field, I should say. It's free as in $0.0, no parking fee, no ticket fee, the only money that you're going to spend if you have to spend any money is to go get something to eat, and like a hot dog and a bag of chips and a Gatorade is like $9. And that You can't get a single item at a professional game for $9, let alone a whole, essentially a combo meal, right? So you got to partner with the U of M because that is, you hear it all the time. The University of Memphis still means a lot to a lot of people. And so, especially with as good as the program that Coach Mulrooney and Coach Monaghan have been running over there at the U of M, whoever this prospective new professional team in Memphis, hypothetically, you need to get out there. And honestly, you need to have a presence at every single game. The preseason exhibitions, regular season, men's, women's, conference tournament, NCAA tournament, whatever, you need to be out there. If it's a tent, if it's an ambush where you just have 3 or 4 people handing out gear and stuff and stickers, and like ambush marketing, real marketing, whatever, do it both, do one, do both, do whatever, do something. But there is a flip side of that. You can't just expect the University of Memphis to go, yeah, come on down. We don't want anything. They're going to want something in return. So you need to get those professional, those college soccer programs, you need to get them out to your professional game more regularly than 901 FC did. I think 901 FC had the U of M women's team out there like once ever. I think maybe Brooks Monaghan did a guitar smash one time. And I always kind of I went back and forth on the guitar smash. I liked them and I didn't like them because honestly, I think smashing guitar is kind of dumb. But I liked it because you could get somebody famous to do it that would draw people to the stadium. The problem was that after 2019, you didn't have you burned through all the famous people in Memphis that you could get to do the guitar smash. They tried that in 2023 with Seth Hennigan, Memphis quarterback. Unfortunately, Memphis football in this town is treated not too differently than 901 FC was, so that didn't do a whole lot for you. But I liked the idea and I liked the effort. So you need to have a presence at the soccer games on campus at the University of Memphis, but then you also need to have a University of Memphis presence at the professional games. And I think that would also extend to not just having the teams down there to be honored or celebrated, or, hey, Memphis women's soccer begins their season next week against Ole Miss. Get out there and support them. Use promo code whatever. Well, that wouldn't matter because the games are free. But also have some sort of college night and specifically target students at the University of Memphis. That doesn't mean it's only University of Memphis. It's going to be University of Memphis, CBU, Lemoyne-Owen, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, whoever, Southwest Tennessee. But if you want that to be a mutually beneficial partnership, you gotta be, I don't know the mechanics of it, but you gotta get people at the University of Memphis involved with your operation as well. And then one other thing is recognize the area high school teams that are competing for state titles. That's something that I feel like they could have gotten with our buddy John Varlas from the Daily Memphian at any point in time. I don't think there's anybody in the city that is more knowledgeable about high school sports than John Varlas. And there are always both boys and girls teams in the area competing at a very high level in the state of Tennessee. I'm a CBHS grad. CBHS was one of the powers of high school soccer in this country when I went to high school there. I think Houston is like the number one girls high school program in the country. St. Agnes always has a good team. White Station, Kingsbury, all of these places, if they're competing to bring some sort of trophy back to Memphis, if you're the professional soccer team, you need to have them out to a game, or at least be acknowledging them on social media. Congrats to such and such school or good luck to this school going to state championship this weekend. And, I feel like they tried that a little bit in 2019, and they tried that in 2023. Stephen Glass and Caleb Patterson-Sewell went down to Lewisburg and Olive Branch because both their girls and boys teams were competing for a state title that weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Unfortunately, they both just got smashed. But recognize the area high school teams. I think that will go a long way. You got to do a good job of building relationships. And if you're building relationships at the University of Memphis and you're building relationships with the high schools and the other schools and the local clubs and the complexes that host local clubs, I think you're going to be successful. And another series of relationships that you need to make happen, I don't know where you would rank it. It's pretty top in terms of importance, pretty near the top in terms of importance, but you have to sell yourselves to the local media. And I'm part of the local media. I understand that. And John Varlas and I were the only parts of the local media that covered 901SC with anything resembling regularity. As a matter of fact, there was one outlet in this town that told somebody that wrote for them that liked soccer, under no circumstances was he to acknowledge 901FC's existence. Was he to say anything about 901FC, tweet anything about 901FC, write anything about 901FC? So that was frustrating. If they, and I had this conversation with PR people at 901FC, it said part of the problem, well, nobody reads our stuff. Well, it's because you bury it. You don't ever give it a moment to breathe at the top of the page. As soon as it goes up, you dunk it down to like the bottom corner of the web page, and nobody does that. People are stupid and lazy and don't ever want to actually look for anything. So unless it's right in front of their eyeballs, they don't see it. So the outlets had to do a better job, and they didn't. But you need to, like I said earlier, ram it down their fucking throats until they choke on it. That's what you got to do with the local media here. That's multiple sports talk radio stations. That's 5 or 6 different local TV stations. That's several print outlets. That's several online outlets such as Bluff City Media or Grand City Media or whoever. All of them. Make all of them aware to the point where they, again, get so frustrated that they're like, fine. That's what it's going to be. And of course, I don't want to just point out the negative. I would, again, I did a lot. I was at like 86 out of 100-something 901FC games that they played at home. I covered 3 of them on the road. John Varlas was there more often than not, representing the Daily Memphian. Channel 24, Caleb and Rachel both did, I think, a very good job at being at midweek media availabilities and at the actual games for Channel 24. Jeff from Channel 3 was always there with the camera for midweek media availability and for most games. But it's got to be everybody. It's got to be Channel 5, Channel 24, Channel 3, Channel 13. Fox 13, I don't think showed up once ever or said anything about it ever. But in Channel 5, I don't think, despite being like the TV partner for them, I don't think was ever, I think not since 2019. They showed up at like the first game in 2019 and the last game in 2019, and we never saw Channel 5 at a game after that. And then there's just some other smaller stuff. You know, you need magnet schedules, which they finally did this year for the season ticket holders, which I thought was great because I loved a magnet schedule growing up. But you also need those little wallet schedules, right? The River Kings and the Redbirds used to be really, really good about that, and I think even the Grizzlies too. It like just sitting at the bar at Huey's or sitting at the bar at Buffalo Wild Wings or wherever, they'd have that little box about this big with the little wallet schedules in it. And I love that because, if I'm just sitting there I'm like, oh, I wonder when the next game is. Oh, I have something. I just open it up and it's right there. Instead, oh, let me go to this website. Oh, it doesn't work. Let me go over here. Let me look this up and pull this out and do that. No, you just go, boop, it's right there. Wallet schedules, magnet schedules. And I mentioned this earlier. You got to having coaches and players do more events and more appearances at other sporting events. You got to make your coaches and players more available to the local media as well. And I'll do my best. That was something that I had plans for, which are now no more, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But I beg of the local media, if you do have an interest in soccer, please try to discuss it intelligently. I don't like to be the gatekeeper guy, and I really don't like it because that's a huge turnoff for people that are trying to get into soccer is when fandom is gatekept by soccer fans, and I understand that because if I'm trying to get involved in something and the people that are already involved in it are telling me how I'm stupid for wanting to get involved in it, I'm probably not going to want to be involved in it anymore. So I really don't like to be the gatekeeper guy, but also if you could put some sort of effort into trying to discuss the subject intelligently, and when before 901SC's playoff game, Caleb Patterson Sewell was a guest on the Jeff Calkins show, and I don't know if Jeff Calkins had been in a coma for the last 8 years, if he would have been any less prepared for that interview than he otherwise was. I mean, it was very frustrating, and I'm glad that he had him on, and I look forward to Jeff having more soccer talk in the future, and everybody at that station to have more soccer talk in the future. But I beg of you, please attempt to be prepared if you're going to have guests on to talk soccer. Please, I beg you, please. I understand that it is not the first, second, third, fourth, or fifth priority for Sports Talk Radio Memphis, but please attempt to ask intelligent questions. I beg you. And I don't like to have to be that guy. I really don't, because of, like I just said, I'm sure they're like, think I'm doing you a favor by talking about this, and now you're mad at me for the way I talked about it. And I don't want to be mad for the way that you talked about it. But you have to do it intelligently. And it just, that's the instance that stands out in my mind. I do want to, Greg and Eli on Sports 56 have always been very accommodating of me and had me on many times over the last couple of years. And they ask intelligent questions, so I do appreciate that. And they had Stephen Glass on several times over the years. So that was always something that I appreciated is the way that when they did discuss soccer, the questions that they asked made sense. I did appreciate and respect that. But enough about the local media stuff. The last thing as far as marketing, right? And I've spent a lot of time on this because it's got to be the most important thing. It has to be the priority. It can't be a priority. It has to be the priority. Because not only was it not the priority for 901SC, I'm not even sure if it was a priority until this year. And as we've seen, it was a day late and a dollar short. But you also have to take care of your season ticket holders. And they tried to start doing that this year. And I thought what they did for the season ticket holders was pretty good. Special events like the jersey reveal. There was a watch party, a scarf. But you have to make people want to be a season ticket holder. Especially in this day and age when the number of people getting season tickets isn't what it used to be across all sports. You have to incentivize it. You get a scarf, you get a jersey, all Open Cup, all playoff, all friendly games included in the season tickets, meaning as soon as we're advancing the Open Cup, boop, there you go. We got 800 season ticket holders. That's automatically we've got 800 people at the game. So you got to take care of them in that way. I liked in 22, or maybe it was 21, one of the years where they would have like meet and greets with the players on the club level at AutoZone Park. I liked that. But I understand you can't do that after every game because, the players, the coaches, they're going to want to go home. Are they really going to be wanting to be up there talking with people they don't know for 3-4 hours after game? Probably not. But you got to show your season ticket holders that that they matter, and that you appreciate them. Because if I had one person tell me, I had 1,000 people tell me how unappreciated they felt by 901FC. So I think you can go back to read my 2023 attendance article, and I believe the closing line of it is, it doesn't feel good when you show loyalty to somebody for 5 years and you feel that loyalty is not repaid or appreciated. So that was a problem. And if a team is to come back to Memphis, that's a problem that has to be remedied. And just a couple of other miscellaneous things that I feel like they could do. And they started trying to do it this year. And I think preseason scheduling, what they tried to do in 2024, which I loved, they tried to play at the U of M. They tried to play at CBU. So you're getting essentially home games. You're getting games in Memphis that you don't have to play at AutoZone Park and tear up or out at Mike Rose, right? Those are games that, again, beneficial to the University of Memphis, beneficial to CBU. Unfortunately, the CBU game got canceled. And 901SC, like I asked around at 901SC, and they were like, we have no idea why. They just called and said, yeah, we can't play this game. And What I was told by somebody, it was within a different sphere of my life, that said, I think there's some there were some roster issues or some eligibility issues, which I thought was strange because the college soccer I know they have that like goofy spring soccer season, but like the real college soccer season goes August to December. So I don't know why like a game that didn't matter and didn't count towards anything would have been a problem. But anyway, if a new team comes to Memphis, if they can figure out how to do preseason at the U of M and at CBU every year, you're getting essentially the benefit of a home game without having to pay for it. And then this is something that I yelled and screamed about since day one. You need to, and it was specifically with Atlanta United, but there's 3 Southern MLS teams now: Atlanta United, North Carolina FC, and Nashville SC. If you could get one or multiple of them to come play you in a preseason game out at Mike Rose, that would be huge. Again, that's not your home stadium. Well, it might be, but it's not your home stadium. And you get the benefits with none of the negatives that go with it. And one of the very few times in this city's history where the local media cared about 901 FC was when Orlando City came to town for the Open Cup. That was an MLS team. I feel like even if it was a preseason game, there might be just a little bit more interest if Atlanta United, North Carolina FC, or Nashville, especially if it was Nashville. And they went to Nashville this year and played behind closed doors. Otherwise, I would have gone. But, if you can somehow, and maybe you have to do like the University of Memphis does with football, right? Do like a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1. Like if you come here one year, we'll go the next 2 or 3 years to play your preseason game for you up there. But I liked the way they tried to do the preseason scheduling this year, and it ultimately just didn't come off. And then one thing, pick a style and color of uniform and stick with it. That was something that drove people crazy. Is every year, like they went from blue to a different blue to black, back to blue to black, back to blue. Like have a home jersey, have an away jersey, and have an alternate jersey, and stick with it. Don't need radically new styles and colors every year. Don't need it. Pick one and stick with it. And then if all of this ends up being successful, the next step to me is instead of just trying to be a local brand, you need to try to be a regional brand, right? So not just within the Memphis metro area. So once you really get a foothold and feel comfortable that you're pretty successful at getting people from Memphis to go to professional soccer games for this hypothetical new professional team, start expanding a little bit. Not necessarily playing games, but doing some sort of marketing or a skills clinic or Jackson, Tennessee, Oxford, Mississippi, West Memphis, Arkansas. Maybe you should be trying to get West Memphis, Arkansas anyway. Don't just pull from the Memphis metro area. Try to become kind of a regional brand, right? Because they were really just a local, as such that they were a local brand. Excuse me. So if you can establish a strong foothold in Memphis, there's no reason not to start going to branch out to Jackson. There's a lot of soccer played in Jackson. A lot of teams come to play in Memphis from Jackson. Go to Oxford. They got very nice soccer facilities down there in Oxford. Somewhere in Arkansas. A little bit harder to do, maybe, but some of those areas between here and Little Rock. Try to become a regional brand. Obviously, you need to focus on being successful locally, but if and when you are successful locally, you need to grow more regionally. And then we'll close it out with me personally. There's a lot more that I feel like I could have done. Maybe, I don't know if this is necessarily survivor's guilt, but I feel like there was more that I could have done in covering Memphis 901 FC. And it makes you wonder, if I had done more, would more people have gone and would the team still be here, right? 19 and 20, no qualms about. I don't know that I could have done any more in 19 and 20. I was at every game in 20. I think I only missed 2 games in 21 and 19, and one of them got rained out and rescheduled, and I made the makeup. So, but 2021 and 2022, I was slacking big time. 23 and 24, much better. I made it just about every game. I missed, I think, 2 last year and 2 the year before. But 2022 were really bad for me. And I think I owe you guys an explanation as to why. And it's something that I've talked about with a couple of people. But in 2021 and 2022, I was in this very ugly, very nasty, very toxic, on again, off again relationship with somebody who was very belittling of the way that both of me refereeing and of me covering the team. And I was told that it was stupid for me to be doing that. And I was told how nobody cared and nobody paid attention to anything that I said or did. And why are you going to do that when you could be doing stuff here for me? And that's why my coverage was lacking those 2 years. I think I made it to about half the games each year. And of course, made it to no midweek media availabilities, none of that stuff. I am very, very glad for a variety of reasons that I'm now past that. And I'm getting engaged to an absolutely amazing, wonderful woman, or I am engaged to and getting married to an amazing, wonderful woman who has always been so incredibly supportive of me doing this stuff. And I tell her all the time, but if you're listening, I love you so much. Thank you for being so supportive and appreciative, because it means the world to me, because I've been in a spot where doing this, where I was told how stupid I was for doing this stuff. And that's why I did not do what I needed to do in 2021 and 2022. So I do apologize to everybody for that. And I feel like I did much better at that in 23 and 24. So if a professional team does come back to Memphis, I can't be missing so many games. I got to be there. The games are the most important thing, but it's not just the games. It's stuff that goes on with the games. Midweek media availabilities. That's something that I didn't do a very good job of last year and did a much better job of this year. Now, I also have a regular job working for a bankruptcy attorney, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So there were times where I was not able to get away from the office to go down, but there were times where I was. So, that's something that is, when possible, I would try to be there, but my main job, that's what pays the bills. So that's the most important thing. But something that I feel like I had plans for next year, and I had talked to several people, about it, is one thing that I could probably start doing as far as the podcast goes is have podcast episodes when the team is on the road. And I yelled and screamed about it when I was talking about the watch parties. How you need to have more watch parties when the team is on the road so they don't slip out of the consciousness of the city. Well, I was just as guilty of that. The only time I can recall doing podcasts about road games is the road games that I went to last year in Louisville and this year in Birmingham. And I feel like I spent the majority of the time bitching about the one in Birmingham, complaining about how awful of an experience dealing with the people at the Birmingham Legion was. But if and when we get a professional team back in Memphis, you can write this down, bookmark this tweet. Podcast episodes for when the team is on the road are going to become a much more regular thing. And then I had also was planning on trying to have coaches and players on more regularly. This was something I was talking about. I was like, hey, who are the guys on this team that are like characters that feel comfortable talking on camera and on the record? That would be entertaining for the audience. And we were kicking around some ideas on who we might want to do. Unfortunately, that's not going to come to fruition because the team left, because now I want to see is gone. But that's something that if we do get a professional team, I'm going to try to have more people on. You've seen it with the last couple of episodes of the 901 Soccer Podcast about college soccer, about 901 SC leaving, and then our most recent Tales from the Tunnel episode. And that is something I'm going to try to have more people on in the future, because I can't just let the podcast, I put too much blood, sweat, and tears into this podcast to let it just go now that the team's not here anymore. So there's some interesting topics and some interesting guests hopefully coming up in 2025. But if we do get a professional team back, I think more podcasts when the team is on the road, coaches and players on a little bit more often, I think is going to be the plan going forward. That's all that I have got. Again, I don't necessarily want or need a team back in Memphis anytime soon. I would like them back eventually, but that's what is going to have to happen if we are to get a professional team back in Memphis to make it successful. And I think here, that's just over an hour. So I think that is a good place to stop. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in and listening or watching and for following along all this year. Got probably one more episode that we'll do this year, just like kind of like a year-end recap like we did last year. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, all of my written content that used to be at World Soccer Talk is now at Bluff City Media. I've got 4 days in a row. I've got new pieces every day this week about U.S. men's attendance, U.S. women's attendance, Mexico attendance, largest soccer crowds in the country. You should all go to the Bluff City Media website and check that out. You should follow me on Twitter at LDoc93. Follow the 901 Soccer Podcast on Twitter at 901 Soccer Pod. Follow Bluff City Media on Twitter at Bluff City_Media. Find us on Facebook, 901 Soccer and Bluff City Media. And of course, here on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and we will talk to you next time.